It's time for my virtual Jericho with John Mair.
Welcome to a very special My Jericho, the online launch of a much anticipated Jericho Oxford book. 6 months in gestation and already a bestseller locally in Jericho and maybe in Oxford too. This Christmas and well beyond. Life is circular, really. This is where it all began. The Lynn Race Cocktail Bar on Walton Street. Dynamic architect Paul Southouse, next to me, created this bar. It's open on Wednesday to Saturday nights, as you ask, and also the exhibition of the history of Jericho last summer that begat the book. Let's look at some of the boards that part of that exhibition. These boards, which were exhibited here, became the coffee table, lavishly illustrated book now on sale. It's brimful of content on the history of our neighbourhood, but plenty too on the contemporary and future Jericho. The icing on the cake is a foreword by Sir Philip Pullman, the author of His Dark Materials, which is on telly this Christmas, and much more. He's a Jericho nut. Some of his stories are based here. The book is rich in illustration, photographs from Chris Andrews, who is a doyen of Oxford postcard trade and a brilliant photographer, and photographs of the canal, the cemetery, and much, much more. There's lots of that to take in. Paul Southwood has his map is here, in his unique hand-drawn map. You find your street. It's now a tea towel for sale, and it's also got the work of two very talented artists in it. Valerie Petts is the constable of our community. Over the years, she's elegantly painted the change of Jericho from poverty and red lights and light industry to the trendy, vibrant era it is today. Her paintings shine through these pages. So too those of Wayman Hay. He is the visual. He's a visual Boswell of Jericho. He's chronicled the rise of the Ratcliffe Infirmary, or the Ratcliffe Quarter, from what was the Ratcliffe Infirmary to what it is today, which is mass buildings and the Bavadnik building as well. It's a set of very distinctive buildings. Look, they're Marmite buildings. You love them or hate them, but they're certainly brilliant. Wayman drew the building in a unique style. And still to come, Schwartzman Concert Hall. That's a very distinctive building with this huge concert hall. Jericho's Oxford Cultural Centre, and right here in Walton Street, the new St Paul's House, opening early next year. The architect of that is one Paul Southouse. Life is truly circular in this part of the world. So let's look at the book again. There's a sample of the cornucopia of riches in the book. It's priced at £20 and it's worth every penny. Available locally from shops and pubs in the city, from Blackwell's and Daunt Books and Chris Andrews Publications, and from Amazon. Let's, in the next 30 or so minutes, explore how the book was made and persuade you to buy at least one copy of the book and the tea towel. Paul, how did this book come about? How did the exhibition come about?
Well, foremost, I'm an architect and have been working in this area for nearly 20 years. I have a true love of Jericho and its scale and its specialness within Oxford. So setting up the practice in this building at 103, we decided to open at the time an off license, which then became the cocktail bar. And to really celebrate that opening, we wanted to draw people in. And as part of that, we set up an exhibition talking about the brief history of Jericho that I've learned over the years. So it's a way of informing and educating everyone about what Jericho is, how it came to be, and really learning more about it. Because there's always pressure for development in the future. There's always change that's going to happen, and in order to allow or understand the best way to make changes is first to understand what is here and make sure everyone else knows what is here and why it's here.
How did you come to write the history, or the history be written on those boards? Can you explain that to us?
Well, very much it was following you, John, and my virtual Jericho and the good work you did with Mark Davies, who was introduced to via your podcast. There's such a richness in the history in the podcasts that or videos you've created that taught me a lot more than I already knew. And then tapping into that, we went on a journey with Mark and put the history together, sort of sectioning the history into 4 main phases.
Now, you also, one of the highlights of the book is your design of a tea towel. Perhaps we can see that, which is available for £5. How did you come to draw this?
We wanted a map in the book to capture Jericho as it is now. And I love drawing. I can't stop drawing, and I love drawing with pen on tracing paper. And it was just a case of me sat there drawing for many hours, and it's something that could be used inside the book as well, to show different places and really understand the boundaries of Jericho itself. That's the most important thing, is understanding the canals on one side, Water Street's the other side, and where is Jericho as a place.
But you didn't put any streets into it, did you?
Into the street naming?
Yeah, no, it's not effectively an A to Z, is it?
Not at all, no. It just captures that grid and pattern of development that is unique to Jericho, all the little, terrace houses.
If you were to talk to a stranger and tell him or her what Jericho was, how would you describe it?
It's an independent part of Oxford, which is so close to the centre, and there's a vibrancy and hub to it, which what is it? The creative and cultural quarter, or the potential of that in the future, maybe. That's how I would say.
Is it well branded enough as an area in the community?
No, it's not. Well, it's not branded at all. There's not one signpost pointing to Jericho in Oxford or anywhere. There's a single sign that says Water Street in the whole of Oxford. So that's something we need to work on.
What would you brand Jericho as when you come to properly brand it?
So that's the journey we've got to go on. I don't know. I think independent Jericho is strong, or just Jericho in itself. It's such a strong name. It's really thinking about what that means.
Oxford's urban village.
It's not really a village, is it?
No.
But it is designed to human scale, which is something that came out in our research. We've been talking to Mark, which is a lovely phrase. So,
about the process of making this book, how did you find that?
Fascinating. The speed at which it happened. I know what's involved in design development, and presentation. I think working as a group of four, we complemented each other, and somehow you pushing made it.
I never push anybody. I'm not pushing.
Well, not okay.
What could we have done better?
Well, the more time you have, the better things are, perhaps.
Is that always the case?
Yeah, because you allow for development, but then equally, then you have more and more decisions to make. So I'm really happy with how it's come out. I was very proud of what it is.
Moving on from this, you've actually applied to the Oxford LEP, haven't you, to do something about with a website and so on for Jericho?
No, precisely. Yeah. So that as the next step, really, is understanding what Jericho is and what it is in the future, and really trying to bring everyone together. So through this process of putting the book together, we've engaged with all the other businesses and parts of the community that we wouldn't have done so with, and it's really catapulted that. So then we can really start talking to everyone, understanding what is Jericho to them, and what is it going to be in the future, or how do we make sure the good bits stay and anything needs improving improves.
What's it going to be like in 5 years' time once Schwartzman opens up and so on?
Well, it'd be fascinating to find out, won't it? I think that cultural quarter, live performances and concerts, world famous artists coming to Jericho is only going to be supportive and fill the void that the infirmary left when that went. So.
But Walton Street will surely just be cafes, restaurants, and there'll be no.
As long as there's a vibrancy and an independent nature to it, I think it will be. It's all good, isn't it? It's all good.
And your building across the road is St Paul's House, which you've been working on for 7 years.
Yeah, no, it's 8 years.
What difference will that make to the community in the area?
Well, there's going to be a useful convenience store, I guess, at the base, perhaps. Yes. But I think that just having an active frontage, because it was obviously the doctor's surgery for a number of years, and it's been empty for all that period, which is it's not good to have a section of street which is not active, I think. So it'd be great to have that, people coming in and out, people being drawn to it. And obviously then there's more homes being built, more flats above, and also it's a bit of a test bed architecturally in terms of its environmental approach. It's going for zero carbon development, which will be our first.
But you and Lucy's have done something quite brilliant on the outside of that, on the hoardings outside. You've done the history of Lucy's.
No, indeed. Well, again, Lucy Group have a fascinating history and so important to Jericho and making it the way it is, really.
Whose idea was that?
That's very much Lucy's themselves, yeah, and making sure that their story was told was such a great opportunity and a huge investment in making that happen.
I always say Jesus shows the way. Jesus College showed the way on that, didn't they?
They did.
And Schwartzman has now sort of got the bug a little bit, haven't they? A little bit, half the bug, haven't they?
Yeah.
On their hoardings. All right, and so very pleased. If we could perhaps see the book cover and bring Mark Davies. Do you like to swap seats with?
Thank you, John.
Cheers, Mark. It's all your work.
Hello.
This is Mark Davies, the unofficial official historian of Jericho. Mark, those boards, how easy or difficult were they to put together?
They were relatively easy, I think. With working with Paul, he gave a pretty clear brief, and then I just produced a few ideas on a chronological pattern, which is relatively simple to do, and then he left it into the design. So that was the catalyst, wasn't it? Really, for what subsequently became the book.
Were you content with the boards were you happy with the boards?
Yes. Well, yes. Yeah. Essentially, I think so. Yeah. There's a good sort of variety of selection of images, some of which we've used, of course, in the book. The thing we didn't put in boards were some direct quotes from either about Jericho or from people within Jericho. That was the other idea, perhaps, to do it that way and make that a chronological, and then add a bit of sort of historical detail to a particular quote. But we have included a few of those in my section in the book. Yeah.
The boards can be seen, of course, in the community centre in the corridor leading up to the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone wants to see them. But what about the book? How did you find the experience of doing that?
I found it surprising that we achieved it quite so rapidly. Thanks to you. I would not personally have attempted to do something in quite such rapid speed, but it's turned out wonderfully, really, I think. The text I had, for those that don't know, I did, I don't know how long it was, 1,000 words, was it? Anyway, the introduction, it was more, was it? Yeah. Both about the sort of historical side of Jericho, but also the cultural side, because I think that's the beauty of the suburb, isn't it? It's not just any old suburb. It's Oxford's first planned one on a grid pattern. There was a vision for it, I think, right from the first few buildings. But then also you have this wonderful contrast, if you like, of the Pre-Raphaelites and OUP, of course, in one corner, and then Lucy's in the other. It's got this wonderful mixture, hasn't it? Yeah.
It's got a richness which appeals to writers, of course, Pullman, P.D. James, and others. So what is it about Jericho that gets their imagination going?
Well, with Pullman, of course, it's the canal, which is also my starting point. The reason I consider myself to be, or to have been, I should say, a resident of Jericho, and why people of Jericho think of me as a resident of their suburb is the canal, because I lived on the canal nearby for nearly 30 years, and that's the Pullman's attraction to the suburb, particularly. I think his Egyptians. He writes about Jericho in a very intriguing kind of way in his alternative world, Jericho. P.D. James is the church, isn't it? So that's the other aspect.
She also lived in Jericho, of course. She lived in Lucy.
She did, yeah.
And Kingston Road.
Yes, and yes. Well, she was born there, wasn't she? And she had a flat elsewhere in Oxford. So yeah, she has Oxford connections. Who else? Thomas Hardy. There's a reason why he adopted the suburb. He was an apprentice to Blomfield, the architect of St Barnabas Church, and it's clearly in Jude the Obscure. Clearly, he includes the church as a kind of homage to his former boss, Blomfield. There's a nice mixture
We
there, isn't there?
persuaded Philip Pullman to reuse his intro. He'd done it some years ago. Um, how much of a difference does that make to the book, do you think? To have Sir Philip Pullman in it?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I mean, we're pretty lucky in the sense that it's just about to, the last phase of His Dark Materials is about to go on BBC, isn't it? About to be serialised, so that will push his name up in prominence. He's not sort of worldwide recognised. I find when I do tours, maybe half the people recognise the name for
It's all a million books.
Yeah,
Yeah, was it 4 million books he told us?
I should think it's at least.
It's 4 million books, yeah.
But nonetheless, not everybody that comes on my tours and is interested in Alice or history immediately relates Philip Pullman to being in Oxford. It will certainly have helped quite a bit. But I think the very fact that Jericho is Jericho will, people will be interested in the book whether they like Philip Pullman's work or not.
Now, if somebody were to descend from Mars, how would you describe Jericho now and Jericho in 5 years' time?
Oh, I'm not a seer, who knows what it would be like. It's not going to have changed. I don't think it will change that much, will it? No matter what happens in the periphery or along the canal, it's still going to be the same, in essence, mixture of different kind of people. People who've lived here a long, long time, a large number of students that will sort of refresh the kind of energy within the suburb on a regular basis. But the Boatyard is the great hope, really, isn't it? Just to get that sorted, surely that has to have happened in 5 years.
You're chairman of the Jericho Heritage Trust, aren't you? Is that?
Yeah.
The book overall, how pleased or not are you with it? Why should people buy it?
Well, because it's stunningly attractive, isn't it? I mean, it's a beautiful. Well, perhaps I should just row back a moment. There is nothing like it, so it's unique, and there is nothing about Jericho specifically, no publication specifically currently about Jericho. There have been one or two in the past, but they're not currently in print. So it stands alone in that sense, and it's it's beautifully colourful. Chris's photos are first class. My historical summary is brilliant, of course,
Yes, of course.
and,
it's
and
so
the artistic. As I think you've already mentioned, the contributions from of local artists. They sort of really add a wonderful contrast, I think, to the more sort of strictly accurate photographs.
It sold 400 in 2 weeks flat. Are you surprised with it?
A little bit, but it's pre-Christmas, isn't it? And I suppose because it has that unique place in the pantheon of books that I've just mentioned, that's good. It is a bit surprising. I suppose the other point I might make is that when I give talks about different aspects of Oxford history across the county, pretty much every time there'll be somebody in that audience who either used to live in Jericho or had parents or somebody, they have some sort of personal connection. So I think there's another market, beyond.
There's quite a lot of students. I mean, Margaret Thatcher lived in Richmond Road, of course, with what she called 3 red hot communists who ate sausages. And there are others as well, Hugh Quashie and others. But all right, let's have a look at the book cover again, if we can, and then if you would like to swap with Chris Andrews, please. So here it is. It's £20. It's available in bookshops, in Amazon, in Blackwell's, in Dawn's, via Chris Andrews, who'll hopefully be coming and join me here any moment now. Here he is.
How's it?
We've met before, Chris. Chris, how do you feel about this book?
I'm really, really pleased with it. It's absolutely excellent. And it's one of those things that you often get with projects. You get to a stage and say, well, I could do something different, but I couldn't do any better. And I think we managed to achieve that, all of us who are involved in either putting it together or contributing. There's always something you could change, but I was really pleased. I thought it did its job. It showed a really interesting snapshot of a very interesting area.
Enough people in it, do you think?
Quite enough. I'm not a huge fan of people in books.
No, you're not. Not me neither. But
I like I think the architecture and the landscape speaks for itself, and the people are illuminated by the the really nice text, the clear and interesting text that came in.
You of course started off in Jericho. Let's perhaps have a look at some of your photographs, if we can. There we are.
Oh, that's impressive.
That was your first craft was actually working in the RI in
Yes, over 40 years ago, I did come to Oxford with a view for studying X-rays, and indeed did some work in the Radcliffe and the other local Oxford hospitals. But I'm afraid that it was fairly clearly I diverted onto photographing. I just thought there was something about Oxford that had not been so well shown.
There we are. Isis
God,
Bridge.
look at that very early one, the winter one. That's 1982, and that's virtually when we started. That is when we started business in Oxford, because I thought the place had so much to it. It could be better shown in atmospheric pictures rather than just rather straightforward recording ones. And very soon after producing a few cards, we produced a calendar. I just loved the atmosphere of the early morning.
Yes.
And that would dawn. Actually, I took the dog with me then, and her tail froze. And that was such a freezing fog. She had a little white tail running around, like a little flag, but the dog was perfectly happy.
You're the postcard king of Oxford and the Cotswolds, aren't you?
Well, we do sell a lot of postcards, but we've now sold, I think, 500,000 books as well. So the books have become a very important part of things for us, and the calendars, as well as the cards, which I still love doing. And it's marvellous that people enjoy the imagery and will come and buy them.
How many photographs of Oxford do you think you've taken in your time? How big is your library?
Hundreds of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how many pictures there are, because it's only partly digitised. Because I started so long ago, there's an awful lot of transparency.
Which is your favourite parts of this book? Which, as you look through it, you think, God, I'm proud of that.
I do really enjoy the natural world, so the canal is particularly attractive to me, and the views there. But then the architecture of Jericho is so lovely because I can't say it's unchanged, but it is. There is a lot of it that is quite original, and the Victorian, Georgian, and Victorian buildings. I love them. They're gorgeous, and in an interesting light. That is something you can really make a point and say, look, here's the attractiveness.
Actually, there is Jericho of the future. There is
Indeed.
the mural from where the Oxford Wine Cafe is, and there is the Schwartzman building to be. That's the concert hall, and indeed St. Paul's house is there as well. So I mean, you also lived in Jericho as well as working here.
I did. I lived in Jackson Street when we started our business, and I lived there, in fact, while I was working in the hospital too. So I'm very familiar with Jackson Street and the Globe, which sadly is no longer with us, but a nice little pub, corner of Allen Street. Jericho fascinated me, and I was able to spend a lot of time walking out onto the meadow or walking up through Oxford and finding the attractiveness of the buildings and, of course, the interest of the pubs that are there. So I think Jericho has always been a vibrant area to me, and I really enjoyed coming and revisiting it with a sort of new eye, so to speak. And having to get on matters, because we did work with some dispatch, and to get on with things, it meant that, I think I heard Paul saying earlier, you had to make quick decisions. It was this or not, because there isn't going to be a chance to coming back and doing it again. But in my world, the challenge is always, you say, oh, I might photograph next Tuesday. Well, if it's raining and dull and boring, you can't photograph next Tuesday. It doesn't work. You've got to seize the moment.
But if you had another 6 months, how would you have done this book differently?
I think I would have tried to get a little bit more into the detail of the buildings and their history and what is then relevant about them. I mean, I took a couple of pictures of St Barnabas Church, and it's brilliant inside, it's quite extraordinary. But if there were scope and we did a bigger book, there is much more in that than I can show. But hopefully the imagery that we did use tells some of the story and encourage people to go and see it themselves.
It's what you photograph the Baptist chapel, and all it says is free Bibles.
But it tells the story, doesn't it?
If you open it up, there's no Bibles in it.
Well, that's a bit like whoever it is his cat, isn't it? Is it in there or is it not?
Yeah. So which were your favourite bits to photograph?
Right, the canal, very definitely. I really did enjoy it. The boat yard there, it's lovely. I don't mean the one that's under redevelopment, the college cruisers,
yes.
that is functioning so well. And then, frankly, the streets. The streetscapes are lovely, and you can really make a point about how the architecture is either changing subtly or not changing at all as you look through it. And I think closely after that would be the Tower of Winds and that Radcliffe area, the old Radcliffe, partly through enjoying having worked there, but also just looking at that building, what's been done to it, really interestingly developed, and that whole area by the Tower of Winds. I mean, that's a pretty. You asked what else I'd do. If there was more time, I'd get back into the Tower of Winds.
Go up to the top?
Yes, because it's extraordinary inside. I went to a dinner in there years ago and just thought this is extraordinary piece of architecture.
About commercial questions, we've sold quite a lot in the first 2 weeks.
Yes.
400 odd and
Yes.
100 tea towels as well.
Brilliant.
What do you think the outturn will be in terms of final sales? Any idea?
Well, I think hopefully this level of interest will go on in the short term, in the next few months. But then those that live here have probably bought it, and it will become a trickle. But I think it will be a steady trickle because the book is both attractive and informative, and I think something like that will endure.
Perhaps you have a look at the cover again. Thanks very much, Chris. And perhaps you can have Valerie come and join us.
Thank you.
Valerie Petts, whose work illuminates the book. Is that Valerie? How long have you been painting Jericho for?
As long as I've lived here, which is over 40 years.
So from 1970 something, yes? 80 something, yes. My maths is not good.
No, that's mine.
And so what was the first painting you did?
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Okay.
It's more likely Port Meadow or the canal, probably.
Let's have a look at perhaps at least one of your paintings in the book, if we can. And so, I mean, how do you do it? You just go there with an easel and paint?
Yes, wherever possible. Over all these years I've been painting,
Yeah.
I'll at least want to do a drawing on site.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Here we are, Southouse.
There we are, right.
And the workshop at the front of it, no longer there.
As it was, Auto Works, wasn't that
Yes.
great? You weren't here probably when that.
No.
Right, no, it's 10 years or more ago.
Right. But St Barnabas does seem to feature an awful lot in your painting. Is that because it's central to?
Well, whenever you compose a painting of a landscape or anything, you do want a kind of definite feature, actually, and it's very obvious that height of the tower makes a compositional feature, as Chris would well recognise, being a photographer.
The clock currently doesn't work. The clock is only right twice a day.
At the moment.
Yes, but it will come good soon, won't it? Because that is a central point of Jericho.
It is actually, and people love quarter hour chimes, isn't it?
You live across the road from it, doesn't it bother you?
No, it did when I first moved in. I thought, I can't live here.
Yeah.
But within a week, I was fine, sleeping through it. But I used to go all night in those days.
You worship as well at St Barnabas.
No,
What is it?
no, I don't.
You don't? You
No,
don't? No?
no.
But you go inside.
It's very much. I mean, when you live somewhere over 40 years, I'm very comfortable going in and out, and I do quite a bit for them.
What is it about the church, inside of the church, that's so aesthetically attractive?
Wow. Well, I can say mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Really. Well, people would have seen pictures. Have they seen a picture?
Not
Right.
in this. Do we have any more of Valerie's pictures? We can perhaps.
No, but I was thinking more about the photographs of the interior of the church.
Certainly in the book.
Yes, people haven't seen that.
Yes.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Right. I mean, it's partly the imagery of the pre-Raphaelites, but it's far more than that. Really grand. It's Italianate, you see, if people don't know it.
Well, it's Anglo-Catholic. It can, of course, be quite cold in winter because it's so huge.
Yeah.
And the blue altar as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think it's the best thing about Jericho in lots of ways.
Well, it's wonderful, exactly.
So, what's been your favourite painting of Jericho that you've done?
Oh, well, interestingly, in a way, it's one that showed up already because that's very uncharacteristic of my work, really. The one that had the tower and the old garage.
Yes.
Because that was my brief sort of Van Gogh period, which I just was trying things out.
Yes.
And I copied a Van Gogh painting.
Yes.
And then I did that one of Jericho and one or two others like it. And they're quite fun because the colours are not actually as you see them, but they work, and everybody recognises where it is.
If people want to see your oeuvre, where will they find your work?
Oh, nowhere much around Oxford anymore.
But they'll find it on the website.
Some
You've got a
on my
website,
website,
which is valeriepetts.com.
.co.uk.
So, and if they wanted to buy one of your pictures, how would they go about doing that?
Well, contacting me really through the website.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do they sell and sell well?
I'm not really. I've got a certain age, ripe age, and I've got interested in doing sculpture, and I'm not really actually painting very much commercially anymore.
But where is the most significant place your paintings have ended up? Have they in the Ashmolean, anywhere like that?
Not the Ashmolean, no, but plenty have gone. No, I mean, a lot have gone to Japan and South Africa. I mean, way back, I did a big exhibition which was to do with the crown princes of Japan who came to Oxford, and that was put on in Japan, in Tokyo. So certainly my work's got around.
And you did Worcester College, of course, when the new building was
Yes.
the Sultan what's it building?
Yes, the Sultan of Perak.
Yes.
Yes. Nazim Shah, his name is, HRH, Nazim Shah. Yes. 70 paintings went to his palace.
In the Middle East.
Yes.
Right. The question I've asked others, if you were to describe Jericho to somebody landed from Mars, what would you say it was?
Well, it still feels very Victorian in a way, doesn't it? Actually, when you look at the facades of a lot of houses and the narrow streets, all tightly packed together.
Mm-hmm.
From Mars, I really haven't a clue.
What difference do you think the Schwarzman building will make to the community?
I don't think it would make that much difference actually to Jericho as we know it, confined within its little streets.
What about the cultural centre?
Wonderful. Well, for those of us interested in that, wonderful. I mean, what more could we ask for?
A world-class concert hall?
Absolutely.
A theatre?
Up the road, 5 minutes walk from home.
Yeah. And lots of traffic, of course, that's another question.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for all the wonderful work you did. If we could see the cover again, please. There it is. That's Valerie's painting on the front there. So the book, to reiterate, is called Jericho Oxford. It's cost £20, available from Amazon, bookshops, Chris Andrews, from my front door. If you come and knock at 6 Nelson Street, and after the weekend you'll have lots of them. And I'm also selling them at North Parade Market this week. Meanwhile, my Jericho continues after Christmas. Thank you very much, Valerie. Just hang on for a minute there. So there we are. And that map is now a tea towel. It's a wonderful tea towel, only £5. Again, you should be able to get those in shops and pubs. If not, knock on my front door and I'll find some for you. But we've literally run out of stock at the moment. But moving on to after Christmas for my Jericho, we've got the leader of the City Council, Susan Brown, on January the 5th. We've got a my Jericho question time on January the 12th about whether we need a boatyard at all. On January the 19th, I think it is, we go to Trinity College and have a small guided tour. On January 26th, we'll go to Paul's new building and have a guided tour of that, how it's coming on. It'll be ready in March for open to all. So there's plenty to see. If you want to find out more, just go to myjericho.co.uk. You can find out what's happening and book on it. And meanwhile, it all costs money. So there's always a constant, it's like a church, there's constant appeal for money. If you would like to crowdfund and help, please contribute via Lloyds Bank, sort code 309626, the account 4858460. The account name is Jericho Good Works, and it's called that because it does good works. It's paid £2,000 to the church this year to get the church clock going, hopefully. But please buy the book. Please come to any my Jericho events. Everybody is welcome. But thank you, everybody in here. Thank you, Lynn Race, and it's goodbye and happy Christmas.